Hello, I'm Dr. William Van Gordon. I'm Associate Professor of Contemplative Psychology at the University of Derby in the United Kingdom, and I'm also a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for the Medito Foundation. So today I'm going to talk about using mindfulness as a path to mental health and well-being. And following that talk, there'll then be a discussion between myself and Stephen York, who's one of the founders of the Medito Foundation. And then we'll conclude the session today with a short guided meditation. So thousands of years ago, some meditation experts living in countries such as China and India, they actually projected that there would come a time in the future whereby levels of contemplative awareness, levels of mindful awareness would diminish rapidly, and that would give rise to widespread environmental problems, widespread problems in society, widespread psychological problems. And one of those experts, an eighth century meditation expert, he said that we'd know that this time had come when we start to see iron birds flying in the sky. And some people believe that he was referring to aeroplanes, and you can read into his projection as you wish. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that actually, although mindfulness has become very popular in recent decades, the idea that mindfulness and meditation are good for us, that they can help us foster well-being and wisdom, of course, those are very long-standing ideas. So I like to refer to mindfulness as the practice of observed participation in the present moment. And this term, observed participation, is important because mindfulness isn't only about observing what's happening inside of us and outside of us. It's also about participating in the present moment. So our focus, our aim should be to use mindfulness not as a tool to escape from life, but as a tool to engage with life, to live our life fully. A psychologist in the United States called Ellen Langer, she did some research focusing on the opposite construct of mindfulness, which is, of course, mindlessness. And she described mindlessness really as a state of kind of being on autopilot, whereby we show almost robotic type qualities. And she said that mindfulness weds us to single-minded attitudes and has a lot to do with wasted potential. And I think if we understand this idea, the construct of mindlessness, that can also help inform our understanding of mindfulness. So mindlessness really is when we're stuck in the past, or when we're fantasizing about the future. But that's a problem, really, because actually we can only fully enjoy and fully experience our life in the present moment. The future never arrives. By the time it arrives, it's the present. And so if we're not fully present now, then in a certain sense we miss out on life. Along with colleagues, in order to explain this idea further, I developed a psychological theory called inverted hallucination theory. So I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the idea of a hallucination, which can take on many forms. There can be auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, and in crude terms, we can think of a hallucination as being the perceiving of that which is not. An inverted hallucination then is really like an upside down form of hallucination, corresponding to the non-perceiving of that which is. And myself and my colleagues, we projected that actually inverted hallucinations are fairly widespread. Most people experience them at some point in their lives. So this idea of inverted hallucinations is probably more common than some people might expect. So just to dispel some myths, if you like, around mindfulness. In order to practice mindfulness effectively, we don't have to go to the Himalayas. We don't have to live in a cave or deep in a forest. We can and should practice mindfulness wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves. We don't have to sit cross-legged in the lotus position on the floor. We can practice mindfulness on the job. We can practice mindfulness in the family environment, in the work environment, when we're driving. That's what it means to truly practice mindfulness, not only as something we do when we're sat in quiet, in meditation on our own. It's a practice that we should seek to use in all aspects of our life. So an important principle or an important aid as far as mindfulness practice is concerned is breath awareness. And we can use observing the breath as a meditative anchor, as a means of tying the mind to the present moment, because it might be that that the mind's used to almost having its own way and racing away with itself. And so if we try to just practice mindfulness straight away and be fully present, that's likely to be difficult for some people. So a meditative aid, a tool such as breath awareness, can be very useful in that context. Sometimes when I'm teaching mindfulness to let's say senior business people, they might say something to me like this. They might say, William, I've no doubt this technique works. It's going to be good for my team, but I personally don't have time to practice this. And of course that reflects a wrong perspective, because hopefully we're always breathing, and therefore we don't have to take time out of life to practice mindfulness. We can practice mindfulness and breath awareness wherever we are. So this can be a very productive, a very feasible technique in terms of using it in everyday life contexts. And I suppose one question that might arise is, well, why should we observe the breath? And my answer to that is that we should observe the breath because each breath is unique. Each breath only happens once. It never repeats ourselves. And so if we miss it, it's gone forever. And so it's a good idea to form a relationship with our breath, to notice that each breath in and out has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. We can and perhaps should start to notice the space that opens up between one in-breath and an out-breath. We can begin to experience the texture of breath. However, it's important when practicing mindfulness to allow the breath to follow its natural course, not to force the breath. Don't be what I call a breather, one of those people when you're sat in a meditation hall and you might hear someone really going for it, really breathing, perhaps really trying to show you or themselves that they're practicing hard. But we should be considerate with our breathing and definitely not force it. Something else to think about is, although we can focus our awareness on our breathing as a means of tying the breath to the present moment, that there should also be an element of openness in that focus, so that we can embrace everything else that's happening around us. Our entire focus, therefore, shouldn't just be on our breath. Once we've established ourselves in breath awareness, we can then follow the breath into the body and use it as a means of becoming aware of what's happening in the body and of bathing and calming the body. And then, of course, we can follow the breath out of the body. We can follow it out of the body and see where it goes. We can start to see our out breath in other people's in breath. We can see, if we look closely and carefully enough, we should be able to see our out breath in the trees. We should be able to see it carried by the wind. We can follow it through time and space. And if we look deeper still, we might come to see that, in fact, from a certain perspective, there's only one breath that we all share. Perhaps we could call that the universal breath. And if we practice mindfulness well, we can start to encounter that universal breath and be nourished by it. So I'd just like to share with you a technique, a mindfulness technique that you can use when you feel you might be entering into mindlessness, when you feel that your mind might be getting carried away with itself, when it won't be quiet, when perhaps you're starting to enter into what I refer to as the soap opera of self, getting too caught up in yourself or in a given situation. At that point, you can send out an SOS. Stop. Observe the breath. Step back and watch the mind. Try to arrest that process of thought rumination and bring yourself back to the present moment. And I'd just like to conclude this short talk by touching on one or two findings from my research into mindfulness, or from my scientific research of this construct. I often work with an intervention I developed called meditation awareness training, a mindfulness intervention, and that can be delivered in a face-to-face or an online context. And this intervention is normally delivered in a group format. It over a 4 or 8 week time period, and it includes guided meditation and mindfulness exercises, seminars, group work, practical activities, and things such as that. But in one study I conducted with a group of 122 managers, those managers that took part in the meditation intervention, compared to a control group that didn't take part, the meditating group showed significant improvement, so much better outcomes in respect of work-related stress, and also in levels of job satisfaction, levels of psychological distress, and in levels of job performance as rated by their line manager. So very, very briefly, just taking psychological distress as an example, there are 3 time points here in each of these charts, one of which reflects the meditation group, the other reflects the control group, and you can see across the course of the intervention a nice flattening off of psychological distress symptoms that were present for the meditation group, but that same pattern of effects wasn't present for the control group. One of those managers said, when we interviewed them after the intervention, they said, when you look at work as a place to grow as a person, every work encounter becomes important. So it was almost as if through meditation, this group of managers were starting to relate to every situation as a possibility for growth. They were beginning to engage their practice wherever they found themselves, and they were deriving benefit and meaning from that. And in the same study, another manager said, it's as if meditation helps you to talk and communicate with situations around you. And another participant of the study said, you begin to sense how things have to unfold. We refer to this type of finding as something called phenomena feedback effect. That's the name that we gave it. Almost as if participants were entering into a two-way relationship with the present moment. They were beginning to feel the present moment, and therefore better able to gauge how things might unfold and how they can influence how things might unfold. Another study, a case study this time, was with a director of a blue chip company who suffered from work addiction, workaholism. And across the course of the intervention, he saw improvements in all of the outcomes that we looked into, such as sleep quality, and that's what PSQI refers to here, or depression, anxiety, and stress, that's what DASS refers to, and in job performance, for example. But he said meditation centers the mind and helps you see more angles, but it also helps you see the human in people. So it seemed that for this participant, meditation helped to change his perspective on life, to understand that there's more to life and more to people than just work. And finally, in another study, this time with a group of 73 individuals also suffering from workaholism, those that completed the meditation intervention compared to a control group that didn't practice meditation, those in the meditation group showed significant improvements in, for example, workaholism symptoms and job satisfaction. But importantly, although their work duration reduced, although they worked less hours, their job performance, level of job performance didn't reduce, suggesting that actually mindfulness, it does have utility, it does have applications in everyday life settings. This can be a productive practice. That doesn't mean we have to step back from life. It means we can engage with life too and fully enjoy our lives. And of course, you can download the Medito app and explore and enjoy and benefit from the many different types of guided mindfulness and meditations that are available there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, William. That was really interesting. Really cool to hear about your research, as well as benefits that mindfulness can have in people's lives. I would just quite like to hear a bit more about your personal experience with meditation and mindfulness. How did you initially kind of get into that area of work? I know you were a Buddhist monk previously, so how did you kind of discover that path? And yeah, how was it for you right at the very beginning?
Yes, I think I embarked on that journey because although I understood there's still lots to explore in the physical world and in space and in the universe, I also felt there was lots to explore, I suppose, inside of ourselves. I felt there was a universe inside the mind, and that through exploring that, not only would I come to better understand myself, but I'd also come to better understand the world. And I think that's really what inspired me to begin this journey.
Okay, amazing. And so, and the transition between being a monk and being a scientist, what was that like? And do you feel like you kind of discovered equal amounts of things from each way of life?
Yeah, I think there's actually quite a lot of compatibility between those two roles. A monk really involves, or at least it should involve, hard work, hard investigation of yourself, hard investigation of the mind and of phenomena and of investigation of the world. from a first person point of view, and science complements that really, because then you're investigating really from a third person point of view. You're observing a phenomena and using tools and techniques to help you do that. So it's two very different types of evidence, two very different types of data that you gather from these two different processes, but they're both very important. And yeah, both complement each other.
Okay. And so what was your kind of daily practice like as a monk?
Sure. My daily practice as a Buddhist monastic would involve getting up quite early, with, I suppose, lots of structured formal meditation sessions throughout the day, lots of study into meditation, but also lots of engaging of that practice with lay meditation practitioners, and trying to offer them a helping hand on their path, on the path that they might be on also. But actually, as the practice is, as a monk, I think some people think it can be easy, but it's not, or at least it shouldn't be. It should be hard work. Delving into the mind and exploring the mind takes courage, because there might be because it's uncharted territory, and I think that's one principle that I learned to apply as a monastic, but it's a principle I still apply now as a former Buddhist monk. It takes courage to step back. It takes courage to take ownership of one's life and of one's well-being. I think modern society at the moment, particularly, it lures us in, or it draws us in to living what can be a very fast pace of life. That can be very materialistically focused, and to break that cycle, to take responsibility for one's well-being, it takes courage and it takes determination, but it's also a very joyful and rewarding process.
Okay, great. And yeah, so I guess it's a lot of discipline for a long period of time as well, I guess. So what was it like transitioning from that lifestyle kind of back into kind of the rat race kind of thing, and going into research and science? I guess, did it help you kind of face things like stress and workplace anxiety and things like that? Yeah, how did that process go?
Sure. It was really quite a natural transition, actually, a necessary transition. I think for myself, I felt in order to move forward with my practice, it was necessary to fully engage with life, to practice and be able to practice in a family context, in a work context, in the real world. Because I felt I wanted to reach a point where actually I wasn't practicing. I was just living. I was being my practice as much as possible, rather than seeing mindfulness as something that's outside of me that I choose to engage with. I think there comes a point where you have to move on from that. This practice has to become part of who you are. It has to become spontaneous. Something that you really enjoy, that happens naturally.
Yeah. And so moving more into your way of life as a scientist and a researcher, what are you currently working on, or do you have any kind of new and interesting research projects coming up?
Sure. I suppose one one aspect of my research for many years has focused on the applications of mindfulness for mental health and well-being, using the intervention I referred to earlier. But more recently, I've undergone a slight change in direction, or maybe I've added a new component to my research, which is exploring more about how the ego, about how attachment to ourselves, about how being overly caught up in ourselves, about how that can impair our ability to enjoy life, to live life, and how therefore undermining the ego, reducing the ego, how that can be a tool to foster well-being, and how mindfulness can play a role in that respect too. Because as we become more mindful, we naturally become aware of not only what's happening inside ourselves, but also what's happening outside of ourselves. We naturally start to embrace the world, to embrace others, and that too helps us get over ourselves. That too helps us reduce the ego. So a lot of my research is heading in that direction too at the moment.
Okay, great. That sounds really interesting. Looking forward to hearing more about that as you work on it. I think we're coming up to the time now where we will go into a guided meditation. So shall I hand back over to you for that?
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
So we'll now practice a short guided meditation based a lot on breath awareness, which we talked about previously. Just very briefly before we do that, try to adopt a good posture for this meditation. It doesn't matter how you're sat. You can sit on a chair, but sit well. Sit like a mountain. A mountain has a definite presence. It's solid. It's deeply rooted in the earth, but it doesn't have to strain itself to maintain that presence. So don't be overly rigid, and don't be overly relaxed. Just sit well and sit solidly. You can close your eyes for this practice, and if you get lost at any time, just come back to observing your breath. I'm going to use the singing bowl to help guide this practice, to help designate the end of one exercise. So just now begin to follow your breath in and out. Begin to focus on the present moment and on being with yourself. Breathing in a long, slow breath. I am fully aware. I breathe in a long, slow breath. Breathing out a calm and soothing breath. I am fully aware. I breathe out a calm and soothing breath. In breath, long. Out breath, slow. In breath, calming. Out breath, soothing. And breathing in a calm and soothing breath, I remind myself that it's okay to take time out to observe my breathing. There's nowhere else I need to be, nothing else I need to do. Simply breathing in and simply breathing out. In breath, calming, out breath, soothing. As I focus my awareness on my in-breath and out-breath, I notice that the mind has difficulty sitting still. The mind jumps from here to there, from this to that, from past to future. And so gently and with compassion, I invite the mind back to this present moment. In breath, I experience all parts of my in-breath. Out breath, I experience and enjoy all parts of my out breath. In breath, simply breathing in. Out breath, simply breathing out. I allow my awareness of breath to deepen, and I notice that the breath has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each breath is unique. It never happens again. And I observe the point where in-breath gives way to out-breath, and out-breath gives way to in-breath. I relax into awareness of my breathing. In-breath, focusing on my breath. Out-breath, I relax into the awareness of breath. Listen. Listen deeply to your life as it passes you by. In-breath, experiencing this present moment. Out-breath, calming, focusing. In-breath, long, out-breath, slow. Now I follow the breath into the body. And with my in-breath, I bathe the body in awareness. I touch my body with my breath and with my mind. In-breath, I notice any tension in my shoulders. Out-breath, I relax the shoulders. In-breath, I feel the weight of body with the chair or floor beneath me. Out-breath, relaxing the body. In-breath, I notice the rising and falling of my lungs. Out-breath, relaxing. In-breath, I experience, I notice my pulse, my heartbeat. And as I breathe out, I continue to allow the body to relax. I allow it to relax back into the earth of which it forms part. Breathing in, I bathe my body in awareness. Breathing out, I allow my body to feel light and free. Having followed the breath into the body, as I breathe out, now I follow the breath out of the body. I follow the breath on its journey through time and space. I see my out-breath in other people's in-breath. I see my out-breath in the trees. I see it carried by the wind. And I notice, therefore, that in other things there is self, and that there is self in other. In-breath, calming. Out-breath, soothing. In-breath, relaxing into the present moment. Out-breath, relaxing into the world around me. Breathing in a long, slow breath. Now we return simply to the practice of breathing in and simply breathing out. In-breath. Nowhere else we need to be. Nobody else we need to be. Simply breathing in. Out-breath. We enjoy the practice of simply being. Thank you for this practice, everybody.